Welcome in your second theory lecture in ID 102, Foundation of 2D Design. Today we are going to talk about design elements. So this is going to be our table of contents. First of all, we're going to talk about the introduction of the design elements. Also, the first element of design is going to be line. And then we'll talk about shape, size, space, color, texture, and lastly, value. So what are the elements of design? So design elements are the fundamental visual and structural component of any visual or graphic composition. So any picture you see that has shapes, form, it has sort of a design element. So understanding how to use them effectively is essential for creating visual appealing and communicative designs. So for example, in this composition, there are elements of design. So the first element of design we are going to talk about is the line. So line is the element of length, mark connecting any 2 points. So this is point A, point B, and the connection between A and B is the line. Also, we can define the line by the mark left by any tool, brush, pencil, stick, or pen, etc. So any mark that is left by any tool, we call it a line. Also, lines are fundamental elements that convey different emotions, moods, and concepts. For example, this is considered as fear. So it's very dark, the background. Now we have a small element here. So it conveys a certain emotion. Also here, happiness with the all of the curved line that are toward upper level. So feeling happy, emotional feeling, it's rising, okay, as the curved line going to upward. Also here is anger, so we have this angular sharp edges that convey anger mood, and also calmness could be represented as smooth lines. So lines can also convey certain emotions and feeling as well, and are considered the fundamental element of design. So we also have line types. We have got an actual line, which is a continued drawn line that connects 2 points. So as you can see here, the lines are all connected and they're all continuous to each other. They connect point A to point B. Any 2 points, the line will connect them. We've got also implied line, which is a series of points positioned next to each other. The eye tend to connect them. So this is a dotted line, okay? So the dotted line, they are placed next to each other, and we can see it and convey it as a line because they are placed next to each other. They are implied line, okay? So any series of points or lines, okay, dotted lines, we perceive them and understand them as line, as a path that guides from point A to point B. And also we have got a psychic line. A psychic line is a mental connection between two objects. For example, this is an object. I can see that this is, like part of a circle. And this is the triangle. And also I have got an implied line here that creates the inner triangle. So the implied line, it has no line. But I can mentally connect them with each other because of the presence of these shapes, okay? It's like an illusion that creates or that makes me understand it as a line. So we've got line types, actual line, implied line, and psychic line. So also line weights. Line has also different weights. We've got thin line. Thin line usually conceived as fragile, elegant, and quality. Okay, you can see the elegance of the thin line. Also is fragile, meaning that it could be broken easily. Also quality because it's so precise and thin, we can connect them to quality. So this is the effect that the thin line when they are presented in any composition. Also, we've got thick lines, okay? Thick lines usually it's difficult to break, which is the contrast of the fragile. Strength, it is so strong. You can see how these type of lines is so strong. And also emphasis. Emphasis meaning making it very important, and this is the first thing that you can see. So it will emphasize the composition itself. So we've got line weights and also the H-line effect. We've got thin line and thick line. Thin line, you see that is smooth, fragile, elegant, and also has a sort of quality. And the thick line, it's difficult to break because it's very thick. Strength and also emphasis. Line angularity also has certain effects. So straight lines can convey stability, calm, and sense of organized. Okay, so all of these straight lines. Comparing to angular lines, it is dangerous because it is conveyed as very sharp edges, also aggressive and strong. Okay, so you can compare it, the angular line with the straight line. And we also have curved line, which is inviting, smooth, and fluid. So these are all the effects that each line angularity could convey in any composition. Also, line direction has certain effects. We've got horizontal lines. They be conceived and be understood as peaceful, calming, and stable. So you can see here the stability of the horizontal line along the interior space. So these are all horizontal lines. This is horizontal, horizontal. Okay, so it has a sense of peacefulness, calmness, and stability. Also, vertical line, it's more structural, balance, and formality. So if you are going to achieve this sort of effect, using vertical line can be very helpful when you are going to convey a message that is balanced or formal or structural. Also, diagonal lines convey motion and direction. So you can see here that the diagonal lines can convey sense of motion. Also, it has a certain direction, so it directs me to a certain point. Okay, and using the line, each line has a different meaning, different effects, and you need to understand the language of line in order to convey a certain mood or a certain effect in your composition or in your design. So understanding the lines and their effect is very important for you to create some sort of composition that convey a certain message or feeling. So the next element we are going to talk about is shape. So what are shapes? Shapes are two-dimensional areas defined by line or boundaries. So I have a certain shape. So the shape has defined by boundaries or a line. Any shape here could be defined by defined by line or a boundary, even if you cannot see it. So here is like a boundary that defined my shape. So we also have shape types. We've got geometric shape and organic shapes. So geometric shapes are shapes that can be drawn using a ruler or a compass, such as square, circle, and triangle. So they are man-made. So the only natural shapes could be found in the nature are crystal and honeycomb. Geometric shape, you cannot find it in nature. The only shapes that we can find in nature that are geometric are crystals. So if you can see the edges of the crystal, they are geometric, and also the honeycomb. Also organic shapes. Organic shapes are irregular shapes that are often complex and resemble shapes that are found in nature. So all the shapes that you can see in nature are organic shapes. So organic shape can be drawn by freehand without using any tool. You can create any freehand drawing shapes, but you can see them mostly in nature. Shape versus form. So a shape refers to the external outline of a form or anything with height and width. So we've got shapes. So this is the circle. Okay, so this is a shape that is defined by an external outline. A form is a three-dimensional object with a volume of height, width, and depth. So these are the forms. This is a spherical form. We can see that the presence of light and shadow creates a spherical shape. Also, this is a cube, cylinder, and cone. So these are all examples of form. So shapes are 2D shapes, form are 3D shapes. So shape is the external outlines of any surface, form with presence of the height, width, and depth. Okay, we can see also the shade and shadow here that creates the form of the shape. Shape relations. We've got detachment. So shapes are positioned side by side and separated by negative space we consider as detached. So this circle is detached from this triangle. How we did understand the detachment? Because we've got here a space. We call it a negative space, okay, or a white space. So this space, we understand, okay, by the presence of this space, we can understand that this object's detached from the other object. Also here in this composition, we can see detachment. So this element here, or this object, is very far from the other object. So this is also detached, okay? There is a certain, how we know that this is detached? Because with the presence of the negative space between any shape. Also another shape relation is touching. So the edges of the shape meet and there is no interval negative space between them. So if there are no negative space, no space between any objects, meaning that they are touching. So you can see here all the shapes here touches each other. Also overlapping, a shape sits in front of or on top of another, hiding part of the shape underneath in it. So when a shape that are hiding underneath another shape, part of the shape we cannot see, meaning that we can see overlapping. So part of the circle we cannot see because it is behind the triangle. Also we can see here in a composition how overlapping it's been created. United or unity, which is the overlapping shapes combined into a single new shape. Yes, they are overlapped, but now they are combined in a new shape. Okay, they are creating a new shape. They both have the same color, meaning that they are behave as a one shape. For example, the heart shape here is consist of two circles and a rectangle. So they are all joined to each other to make a heart shape. Interpenetration, a shape overlaps another and it is transparent so that the shape underneath it is visible. So we can see here that the circle, it's underneath the triangle, but we can see some part of it. So this is called interpenetration. Also we can see here that this shape overlaps another shape, but at the same time they are transparent and we can see the shape of the beneath one. Okay, the beneath shape, you can see it, you can see part of it because it is transparent. So alignment, aligning shape along common axes. vertical, horizontal, or diagonal, can create a sense of order and unity in your design. So if you are going to place shape near each other, do not just juggle them or shuffle them like that. You need to place them along their axes, okay? Each shape has axes, okay? Either it's a vertical axis or a horizontal axis. So they need to be aligned with each other. So now when you are going to combine shapes, use shapes relationships that we have explained before. And also you must follow shape axes and extensions. So here are the shape axes. You can see this triangle has multiple axes, which is vertical axis, horizontal axis, and also diagonal axis. Also here you can define all the shape has some sort of axis. And when you are going to combine them together, you need to respect each shape axis in order to have an organized composition. You cannot just combine them without taking into consideration their axes, okay? So understanding shape axes is very important when you are going to combine shapes. So you can see here that we have a weak relationship and we have a strong relationship, and you can see the difference here. These two are overlapping only with these edges, okay? But here the overlap, you can see the corner of the first rectangle, it's aligned within the center of the other rectangle. So they are respecting the axis of each rectangle. So those we have a strong relationship. Bad relationship, good relationship. How we could achieve a strong relationship? By respecting the shape's axes. So the third element of design is the size. So size is how big or small something is compared to other objects. Large elements often draw more attention, while smaller elements can add detail or balance. So when you are going to talk about size, is how big or small something is compared to other objects. So if you can see this hand, is it big or small? So you can clearly see that it is a big hand. How do we know that it is a very huge and big hand? Because we compare it with the airplane here and also comparing to the buildings over there. So we can understand that this hand is very big. Imagine if I just give you a picture of a hand and ask you, is it a big or small? You cannot understand it, or you cannot find out how big or small something is unless that there is another object that you can see and compare the size, and then you can say, is it a big hand or a small hand? Also, large elements often draw more attention, while smaller elements can add detail or balance. So the first thing you are going to see is the big element. It draws your attention first. And the smaller element would add more detail or add balance in the composition. So in design, size can function, attract, and organize. So if you can see this composition here, we've got the first composition and the second one. If I ask you which one, if you can see the gray circle here and the other gray circle, if I tell you which one is bigger, what would you say? So because the first gray circle is surrounded by a very big circles, we will conceive it as a smaller size. It can appear as in a smaller size comparing to the next one. Okay, so this is another gray circle which is surrounded by a small circle, a small black circles. So we can see that in compare with this circle, this we can understand it is big. Here we will understand that this is small, and here we can understand that it's big because of the surrounding object here. But in fact, they both have the same size. How did we get there? Because the surrounding element here has a feeling or just gives an illusion that the center circle appears smaller in size, where the other one, because the surrounding objects are very small, we can conceive that the inner gray circle is big. But in fact, they are all the same size. So now we are going to talk about space. So space refers to the distance between shapes and forms. It's understood in design as white space or negative space. So the space are the white space or negative space. So the negative space has two meaning. We can call it a negative space or white space. They both have the same meaning. Okay, so this is called the negative space, which is the empty space. So positive space versus the negative space. So positive space is the best described as the area and work of art that are the subject or area of interest. For example, in this picture, the positive space, which is the area of interest or the subject of the composition, we call it a positive space. Okay, this is a positive space. The negative space, anything else in the design, is considered as a negative space. So anything that surrounds the subject or surrounds the area of interest, we call it a negative space or white space. So positive space, the space that are in the design, the important element in the design, and the empty area surrounded the design itself, we call it a negative space. Now we're talking about color. Color is one of the most powerful design elements. It can evoke emotion and create contrast. The color wheel is a fundamental tool for understanding color relationships, including complementary, analogous, and triadic color schemes. So color is also part of the design elements. So we've got this is our color wheel. So we've got primary colors that are red, yellow, and blue. So they are separated evenly around the circle. So between the three primary colors are the secondary colors, which are the green, orange, and violet. So green, orange, and violet are basically the mixture of any two primary color with give you a secondary color. So green is actually a mixture between yellow and blue. The orange is a mixture between a yellow and red. And lastly, the violet is a mixture between the red and blue. So the two primaries they set between. So the secondary color are a mixture of the two primaries they set in between. Okay, so we've got two primaries. Between two primary color, we've got a secondary color. Lastly, we've got the tertiary color. So mixing a primary with a secondary, we would have a tertiary color. For example, if you are going to mix primary color with a secondary color, for example, red and violet, we would have this secondary color. Also, if you are going to mix blue and another secondary color, we would have this tertiary color, okay? Also mixing yellow and a green, which is a secondary color, we would have a tertiary color, which is a yellowish green, okay? This we call it a bluish green. Again, so this is a secondary color. When you are going to mix it with the primary color, you will get a tertiary color, which is a orange, but is slightly tinted toward yellow. And also the same, we've got the orange, red. So these call a tertiary color. Also, we have another wheels that are the color relationship. We've got monochrome. When selecting only a one color and the shade of the color. Okay, I select one color and the shade of only one color, we call it a monochrome. Analogous color or analogous relationship, meaning that I have selected a three colors that are next to each other in the color wheel. So for example, this green color, then we've got the two colors from the left. Also, I can have any three colors that are set next to each color. I can call it analogous color. Complementary, the colors that are set facing each other. So any colors that are facing each other, we call it a complementary color. Even the shades of the same color would consider as a complementary color. So you can see that we've got these two shades of the orange with any two shades with the green. So also complementary, we could choose violet and yellow as a complementary. So any two colors that sits facing in each other with the color wheel, we call it a complementary color. Now we are going to talk about texture, an element of design. So it's one of the design elements. So texture is the look and feel of the surface. So how does the surface look and also how it feels. So we've got two types of texture. We've got tactile texture, which is tangible, and visual texture, which is non-tangible. Tangible meaning that you can touch. It is tangible, you can touch it and feel it. Non-tangible meaning that you cannot touch and you cannot feel, you can only see. So tactile texture, tangible, or visual texture, which we call it non-tangible. So tactile texture, it is an actual three-dimensional feel of surface that can be touched, such as wood, concrete, feathers, and so on and so forth. So this is the actual texture of the wood trunk. Any wood trunk you can see from the tree, you can see it and feel it. You can actually feel the texture on it. The visual texture in two-dimensional form, texture is essentially visual and adds richness and dimension to the work. It has sort of illusion of the surface. Any texture shown in photo is visual. You can see that all the pattern here and the design, we call it as a texture. Even the other photo here, okay, you can see all of the elements, all of the design here. It has certain texture, it has certain feeling. Although we cannot see, but we cannot touch, but we can see that there's a sort of texture. Also here, any sort of pattern, any pattern you can see in the design or in any composition, we perceive it as a visual texture. Also consider as a visual texture, okay, because we've got some elements here that are placed next to each other that create some sort of pattern. We can see that this is a visual texture, meaning that the elements are repeated in the same area and the design. So texture type, something that can feel it and I can touch it. I call it a tactile or tangible. Visual, it is the repetition of the element of any elements. Basically, it could be a pattern as well. So we can actually see it, okay? It has some sort of depth and I can see only, I cannot feel. So here is the soft texture, I can feel it, rough texture and shiny texture. These are all I can feel. Last thing is the value. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of an area of an object. How the object is light or dark. Also, value adds dimension by creating the illusion of depth in design. So there is a high value, meaning it's very bright. Low value, meaning the color is very dark. Okay, so the value, how darkness or lightness of the color, and also it creates some sort of dimension and gives an illusion of depth. So with the addition of color, you can create and convey mood to enhance strong concepts. So colors, you can convey mood. You can have a very strong colors if you are going to have a strong message in your design, or you can have a very light color if you are going to convey a very calm or very soft feeling while you are doing your composition. So this is the value in grayscale. Okay, so the how light and dark the object is, it gives a sense of a 3D dimensional. It has a sense of depth. I can see the shades and shadow and the value. Also, value could be applied in color. So I can see here that there's some sort of depth in my design. So this is the orange shade. So they only uses orange shade here. Okay, so with the lightness and darkness of the shade, I can see that this is very far, and the lightness here meaning that is very near from me. Also here they have used the blue shade. Okay, so darker blue shade, you can see that it is appear the depth downward. So thank you and see you next class.